Greetings. My name is Randy Mayeux, and I am a speech teacher at Eastfield College in Mesquite, Texas, part of the Dallas County Community College District, which has now just been renamed Dallas College. And I am making this welcome video for classes that I teach that are online. And so I'm not going to refer to a specific semester. I don't think if I do, it's a slip up, and I apologize in advance. This is my welcome video. This is the first video that I have recorded for my classes. And so let me again say that my name is Randy Mayeux. Randy Mayeux. And this is a speech class. And you might wonder why Randy Mayeux is qualified to teach speech, other than the fact that I have taught it for around 20 years at Eastfield College. I give hundreds, and that is not an exaggeration, of speeches and presentations every year. I have got my graduate work in rhetoric and public address and communication from the University of Southern California. I have especially studied the civil rights rhetoric, the speeches of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X and others during the mid to late 1950s through the late 1960s. That is a special interest of mine, and through the course of the semester, I will be talking more about that. So what I'm doing in this welcome video is to say welcome. And let me say that there are a few things that you ought to remember about this remote learning era. I have never taught an online class until the second half of the spring of 2020, when we were reduced to online because of the global pandemic. And then in the summer of 2020, I began teaching classes online exclusively because that is the only way that we're able to meet at the moment. Now, I have sent you a number of documents, and I hope that you have printed them out. We're going to look at them briefly, and then we're going to tackle them a little bit more carefully. So let me share the screen with some documents, and let me begin with, let me find it here, this one, remote learning. And so remote learning is a sheet that I gave you, and you will notice that it says, read this before attending your learning session. I prepared this back in March because we began our remote learning era. And so I hope that you will read this carefully on your own. When you are learning, pretend you are in person, turn off your phone, watch and listen. If you're looking on your phone, that's okay, but you'll see later on that I want you to have a bigger screen, the largest screen at your disposal. That will be a better learning experience. And so I'm talking into my 27-inch desktop at the moment. And I do watch some things on my iPad. I admit that I have not gone to the big screen TV, but the larger screen, the better. So please read this remote learning page especially well. Now let me go to some other sheets that I have. Let's see, screen sharing has stopped, so I've got to re-hit screen sharing. Your first assignment that you will have to turn in is this speech listening sheet, and it will be over a TED Talk with Celeste Headley. And so you'll want to put your name on it, and then you want to fill this in completely. And so the speaker name will be Celeste Headley. I forget how long the speech was. It's not terribly long. The date that it was presented and the place and audience and the circumstance of the speech, that would be the TED audience. And so that's what was going on. And then you have to reduce the speech, her talk, to one sentence. That's the thesis of the speech. If you had to answer this question, what did she talk about? That's the thesis. And then she made, I think it's 10 or 11 main points. List them in the main points made. And then the introduction of the speech, how did she introduce it? How did she conclude it? Think about the audience that you saw. Admittedly, a TED audience is a larger audience, but think about the people in the room. And then what was the desired outcome of her speech? And then on the back of this sheet of paper, or the second page, comment on the following: her facial expressions, her eye contact, her use of voice, her use of stories, her level of self-confidence. She is a very self-confident speaker. By the way, if you don't know this or do not discover this, she is a national host for NPR, used to be called National Public Radio. She is an accomplished communicator. How she organized her speech, what you have to say about any visuals she used, what could she have done to improve, and what do you think she did really, really well, and then any other observations, and then write a full, not just a sentence or two, but a full paragraph summary of the speech, as though you're telling a good friend, this is what she had to say, a summary of the speech. So that will be your first assignment. Now, I think I'm still screen sharing, so let me go ahead and show this to you now. We'll talk about it more fully in a few moments. This is your speech review guide sheet. Please notice the difference between the speech listening sheet and the speech review guide sheet. This is your first assignment for a number grade. The speech listening sheet, you will make a C on it. The C is not C like in A, B, C, D, or F, but it is C for completed. You have to do it, but you have to complete it, and you'll simply get a completed grade. On the speech review guide sheet, this will be worth 100 points, and you will need to read carefully how you go about choosing a speech to do this report on. So you'll put your name on it, and then you'll scroll down and you'll fill out all of this, and this will be graded. I do not want short answers. For example, is the speech well written or constructed? Yes or no, but yes, because. Here are the reasons. No, because. You can type on this, you can handwrite it and send me an image of it, and you're allowed to use all the extra paper you need. But answer all of these. When you get to this one, include a favorite quote or two or three. I don't mean the speaker quoting somebody else. I mean an excerpt from the speech. And then, this is important for your grade, write a full one-page summary of this speech. Use the back or second sheet. Let me add the word full here. Write a full one-page summary of this speech. And so that's going to be important when you do that. Okay, I'm still saving the screen. And then we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, kind of a master sheet of rules and guidelines for the speech class. So again, I hope you've got all of these printed out. And then the last sheet that we will talk about is, let's start here. Let's start here. Okay, so I'm going to stop the screen sharing. And now I'm back full blast on the screen. And I do encourage you, I would prefer that we could meet in a classroom and I could give you a lecture, even a short lecture or a longer lecture, many days. We're not able to do that during the pandemic, and this may be used for later times. So hold on one second. I forgot to turn my phone off, and that was a marketing call, so I was able to get rid of that. Okay. Now, let's start with the sheet of paper that says, let's start here. Let's start here. And get your pen ready. And there's a pretty good chance, although I'm still adjusting to remote world, I always said in a live class, this is the starting place. And I also said this will be on the first test. So there's a good chance this will be on a test. And so be ready, keep your pen in hand, and here we go. What is a conversation? When you're having a conversation, what is a conversation? I don't want you to give me an answer for the test that you get from some book or from the dictionary. I want this answer. And here is my answer. The first person speaks while the second person listens. And then the second person speaks while the first person listens. This is called turn taking. T-U-R-N-taking, turn taking. So a conversation is the first person speaks while the second person listens, and then the second person speaks while the first person listens, and they take turns speaking and listening. Now, there's a lot of research that says that we're really good at the speaking part, but we're not as good at the listening part. That frequently when we see two people talking and we call it a conversation, it's actually the first person is speaking while the second person is maybe doing something else, maybe looking at their phone, maybe thinking about how they're going to respond, but they're not really taking in, they're not really listening to the message. And so if you are listening to someone, listen to them. And then when it's your turn to speak, the information says, the studies say, that the second person isn't really listening, or the first person isn't really listening to the second person. They're thinking about what they're going to say next. And that's not a conversation. A conversation is you take turns speaking and listening. And so you need to listen fully. You need to put anything down. You need to pay full attention. You need to attend to the message. And that is what a conversation is. And I present, and I'll probably say this a time or two, I present synopses of business books. I've done that for over 22 years. I read a business book in full, prepare a multi-page handout, and then give that to business audiences or other organizations. That's kind of the main thing that I do. I've developed a niche for that. And I will tell you that there are many books that say business success depends on listening to your client, to your customer, to your coworker. So learn to listen well. That is critical. Now, the second thing on this sheet is the basics of communication. And when you read in the textbook and when you read in any speech or communication textbook, you will discover that there is this vocabulary. There is a sender who sends a message through a medium to a receiver. So right now, Randy Mayeux is speaking aloud. It is being spoken into a computer microphone and monitor and website. That medium is going to send it off to you. Actually, it will pause at YouTube, and then you will receive it in your ears and your eyes. So you have a sender of a message and a receiver of a message, and those are the two key words. That's why I emphasize them. You do have a message, that is critical, and I probably have already had you read my blog post on 2 ways to guarantee a failed presentation. And those 2 ways are have nothing to say and say it poorly. So the 2 ways to succeed, and this phrase you need to really get into your mind is have something to say and say it very well. And so you are the messenger, you have a message, and now you send it to a receiver, a person who receives the message. And so you will not succeed in communicating until that person has received the message. And if you say, well, I said it, I sent an email, I sent a text message, I said the words, until somebody says, I heard you and I got it, I confirm it, to use an old Navy term, and I was never in the Navy, there's an old Navy practice of, now hear this. And everybody had to stop and listen. And until the message is received, you have not communicated. And so notice what else I have on here. Know clearly what you want and intend to communicate. Have something to say. Say it very clearly. Say it well. Say it well. And we'll get to that in a lecture. And make sure the listener and audience understood what you intended. And then just a little kind of ditty to think about giving a speech. About what you say. Say what you intend to say. Say only what you intend to say. No one ever intends to say in a speech, say, here. You say the words you intend to speak. Say all that you intend to say. Don't leave anything out, but say nothing that you don't intend to say. Don't ramble. And so that is a very important little reminder of a successful speech. We'll look at elements of it later, more detailed, but just remember that. And then below it, in terms of what you do, about what you do what you intend to do only what you intend to do all that you intend to do, and do nothing that you do not intend to do. And so you want to gesture, but you don't want to play with your hair. You don't want to rub your nose. I've done that a couple of times in this video. You want your body to be under control. If you're standing, which you should be when you give a speech, I teach in this modern moment from my chair, but if you're standing, you want to move your body and you want to use gestures and facial expressions, but intentionally and on purpose. You don't want to pace purposelessly. You don't want to have too many movements that are distracting. You don't want to play with your glasses. You want to stand up straight with good posture and not cross your legs and look your audience in the eye. In other words, what you do with your mouth and words and what you do with your body and your eyes and your arms and your gestures, all of that matters in a speech. All of it. So that's the sheet. Let's start here. Now, these other sheets, I went over briefly. The speech listening sheet is what you will send me, and you will send that to me as your first assignment. And again, your grade for that will be a C for completed. You will not be given a number grade for that. And then the next grade that you send me, and this one will have a perfect score is 100. It's not uncommon for me to give an A, but it is rarely. In fact, I don't know that I've given many 100s. And in the day of the live class, I would have the students present these aloud to each other, and the students would participate in grading each other. And then they would turn this in, and I would look at what the students graded. I would either confirm or edit a little. And so this time, you're just going to have to write it very well. I'm not going to have you present it orally to me. But pay careful attention to my instructions in the email and the document that I send you with this. You need to pick a good speech. I told you you cannot choose I have a dream. It's a great speech. We're going to study that more carefully. I don't want you to choose a really short speech, the Gettysburg Address or Ronald Reagan's Challenger Address. They were too few minutes. So you want a speech that has enough. And I've given you two sources, and I want to strongly encourage you to take your time in picking out a speech. There are so many great speeches. I've given you AmericanRhetoric.com and the best commencement addresses ever. You're welcome to look elsewhere for good speeches. I want you to be able to print out the manuscript, and I want you to watch the video. If it's not a video, you can listen to the audio. Some of the speeches that are profoundly important are Steve Jobs' Stanford commencement address, a classic and a great speech. Hillary Clinton from the mid-1990s in Beijing, China, on women's rights are human rights. It's a classic and important speech. But there are lots of good speeches on those lists. You're going to pick out a good one, and you're going to get this to me, and this will be your first number grade. Now, I hope that you will read carefully Remote Learning 101. This is just for you to read. And I also hope that you will very carefully read the master sheet of rules and guidelines for speech class. Look at number 2. Every email must have Eastfield student and your session, the session and the year in the subject line. Every email has to have that. This sheet actually has a session from 2020. It gives you other instructions. but I especially want you to look at for your speeches. In my first ever remote class, I had a student who actually gave a speech while sitting on the bed with her blanket. Now, read this carefully. You're going to want to stand. I've got some instructions for you, and I want you to follow them carefully. So those are kind of some quick, welcome and orienting thoughts for today. This will be our short video for today. I'm going to be giving lectures on video that you'll be able to follow along with paper I provide you. You've got your first assignments. I hope you end up learning something about speaking. Remember the simple rule. Have something worthwhile, valuable, useful, informative to say. Have something to say. And then say it very well. Have a good semester. Thanks for listening.